Sorry I'm late. But quick question for you. If you had the choice, would you rather be a hero or a villain? Unfortunately, you don't actually have to pick. Because in Sonic Adventure 2, you can play as both the heroes and the villains. But more importantly, this extends to the CHAO Garden, where you can raise hero, dark, or neutral CHAO, depending on which character you care for them with. And I've got to say, I think I spent way too much time here when I was a kid. Like, almost too much time. But I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one. Literally everyone I know said that they would love a new CHAO Garden game. So Sega, if you're somehow listening to this, you know what you gotta do. I'm usually free to play when it comes to gacha, but a CHAO gacha would probably bankrupt me. I'm just saying, it's free money. But getting back on track, what if we took these amazingly cute designs and turned them into anime characters? I say we find out. So I started by gathering my references. I recently started using Clip Studio Paint's 3D models to help with poses I'm not really comfortable with yet. And these poses definitely fell in that category for me, so it was a big help. It also gave me a chance to make sure the composition would work, since I'm not used to drawing multiple characters yet. I wanted to give the feeling that these characters, despite being polar opposites, were actually good friends. The facial expressions were fun to work on too. I went with a patient smile for the hero CHAO, like they're used to dealing with the other one, and a mischievous grin for the dark CHAO. I mean, come on, looking at the reference, I could not include that grin. And then came the fun part, actually designing the clothes and the hair. I really love this part, but you kind of have to come to terms with the fact that the first iteration of the character usually doesn't turn out that great, at least not for me. So it's important to trust the process when it comes to character design. You gotta remind yourself that every attempt gets you a little bit closer to what you want. And for these two in particular, I wanted to make sure their designs reflected their personalities. So the hero CHAO has softer, rounder shapes in their design to show that she has a more quiet and mild personality. And the dark CHAO has more triangles and spikes to show they're more of a troublemaker. A bit sly, but mean as well. I did my best to show this in the dark CHAO's hair, but if I were to draw this again, I think I would go back to the ponytail, because I think it fits the character a bit more, and it would have been a bit spikier like the rest of the design. I also like to design the characters in the same pose that the illustration is in, if I can. I have a tendency to sometimes get the proportions wrong when I move on to actually sketching it, so I just expand the final design, overlay it over the sketch, just to double check I haven't messed it up really. Another thing I try to keep in mind when designing my characters is to try to keep a balance of small, medium, and large shapes. Small shapes for the details, large shapes for rest, and medium shapes for everything that falls in between. This keeps the illustration from being too busy or too boring. I've noticed that a lot of experienced artists will use small lines or designs on their clothes that help add some detail, and I think it really works. I'm still learning how to apply that myself in my own drawings, but I think I'm getting better at it. I really like the little orbs that the CHAO have on top of their head too. It's cool to see whatever emotion they're having at the moment. And I think that would actually be a really interesting premise for a story too. You know, a character whose emotions are always on display for everyone around them. I bet a good writer can make a decent rom-com with that idea. I'd actually really like to try writing a story like that one day. Seems like it would be a lot of fun. I'm not the best writer in the world, but there's only one way to practice, right? But going back to those orbs, you might have noticed that my model actually has two of them for the antenna. I actually did this completely by accident. I guess the CHAO were just living rent-free in my head since childhood. I really like them though. And now we're in the coloring phase. After designing the characters themselves, this is my favorite part of the process. I like to keep the skin, hair, and the clothes all on separate layers, so I can just hold the control button on the keyboard and just click on the layer to get a selection quickly. I tend to make a lot of adjustments, so this makes it easier for me. I had a little trouble deciding what color to make the skin and the whites of the eyes for a moment. I considered making the hero CHAO's sclera black to match the reference, but it was kind of scary looking, so I changed it back. Kind of reminded me of Kaneki from Tokyo Ghoul for a moment there. I also like to do a lot of my base shading in gray. It allows me to focus on where the shadows should be and not what color they should be. And after I get all my shadows in place, then I worry about changing it depending on what the local color would be. I do my highlights pretty much the same way as my shadows, but I try to make sure that certain areas like the hair have a nice little gradient to it. This is one of the few times where I've drawn more than one character in an illustration. I really like it. It's fun having the characters interact with each other. It makes it worth it even though it's, twice the work. If I were to make a backstory for these characters, I'd say that they were sisters that slowly became more distant as they became closer to their own circles, but they still secretly care for each other. So they would pretend to, hate each other, around the other heroes and villains, but they wouldn't mean anything by it, of course. I feel like that'd be entertaining to watch. And as far as coloring goes, I really enjoy using bright, saturated colors. I just love how it can just, pop and grab people's attention. I've got to be careful though, because sometimes I have a tendency to overuse saturated colors, and because of that, nothing in the drawing stands out. So I want to be careful to use it for the focal points to make sure that they're the star of the picture. So for instance, I wanted the focal point to be their faces and expressions, and I think I could have done a little bit more to highlight that. So if I would have darkened the shadows a little bit, or maybe desaturated the colors so they stand out a little bit more, I think that could have helped. And if I really wanted to, I could have put almost a spotlight on their face and really darkened everything else. I'm pretty sure that would have had a cool effect. I might try that next time. Now for the backgrounds, I never like leaving them blank. There's always got to be something interesting, So I added a gradient to the background, I made it a little bit brighter at the center, and made sure that the shape language is the same that I set up for the characters, so circles and spikes respectively. And these kind of backgrounds with simple shapes and gradients are really easy and actually really fun to make. And in the end, I just added the CHAO in the top left corner so everybody knows what the reference was. And there you have it. So, what do you think? Anyone else you want to see turned into an anime character? Let me know. Until then, see ya.